A few weeks ago in synagogues and Jewish temples all over the world, they heard the sound of a horn. It was the original version of the horn instrument, the ram's horn, the shofar, as it's known. It is blown to recognize the purpose of creation on the day that marks the birthday of the world. The sound of the ram's horn is a reminder of the admonitions of the Jewish prophets to mend our ways and to live such that we feed the hungry, clothe the naked, and free the oppressed. Hearing the sounds of our wonderful guest musicians, the Dallas Brass, reminds me of the blowing of the shofar and all that it means. In September here at All Souls, we took up a collection to buy supplies for our 3 adopted schools. The work of our volunteers and our donations have helped to raise 2 of those 3 schools off the at-risk list. You can applaud that. We can applaud that as well. Because the inequities of our public school system is one of the great injustices of our times. This summer, we also took up a collection to start yet another microcredit bank in Central America. Soon we will have established our 40th bank. Now, do you realize that these banks that we've started have helped free thousands of women and their children from indentured servitude and modern slavery? You see, prior to having a microcredit bank in the villages where we start them, often the people work in oppressive conditions and endure incredible deprivation and poverty. When someone decides to try to break free from these intolerable working conditions, they have to start a small business of some kind on their own. The only way for these people to get money to do it is to go to the village loan sharks. These loan sharks loan the money at excessive interest rates, which make it so that the people receiving a loan can never pay back all of the money. And so their debt just keeps rising year after year so that they eventually become the property of the loan sharks and end up working in a cycle of indentured servitude, which is a form of modern slavery. Now, these banks that we help to create give them another option, an option that frees them from the jaws of the loan sharks and from the indignities of poverty. Another time when the shofar is blown in the Jewish tradition is in the Jubilee year when the people celebrate their freedom from debt and slavery. As we hear the horn's resonance today, let us celebrate. And let us remember the reverberations of the prophet's calls to justice and to love. And let us celebrate the ways that we have helped others far, far away to become free from slavery and great deprivation. Jesus said, love God with all your heart and all your soul, and love your neighbors as yourself. We say here every week, love is the spirit of this church. And we say, let us be especially grateful for the ties of love which bind us together. And we say that these ties of love give dignity, meaning, worth, and joy to all of our days. Dignity, meaning, worth, and joy. Now, how does a little 4-letter word like love give us all that? There's another little 4-letter word called lust, and it might give us a kind of tingle up the leg, but it doesn't give us dignity, meaning, worth, and joy. But we don't just say that love gives us these things, we say the ties of love What are the ties of love? The word religion comes from the Latin root, the verb religare, which means to bind together. It's an old agrarian term that referring to the rope that binds together the wheat stalks. We are bound together by the ties of love, by the spirit of love. Now, it's not uncommon for me at the end of a particularly heartfelt sermon to look out at this congregation and say, I love you. And I do. But how many people can one person really love? And how indiscriminate are the bonds of affection? Can we really love more than a few people? Do I love you as much as, or in the same way as I love my wife and my children? No. And you know I don't. The Greeks had 3 words for love, but we only have one. There's eros in Greek, which refers to erotic love, romantic love, bodily passion. Thank God for eros. There's philia or filial love, which includes the bonds of affection between friends and family. It's not eros, but it is love. And then there's agape, which can be translated as divine love or God's love. Agape is the recognition that from a God's eye view, we are all brothers and sisters. It's a love that allows us to see our own reflection in the eyes of another, even a stranger. To see our sorrow reflected in another's tears. So that when we see through the lenses of agape, we realize that our love extends to all people. But we don't necessarily feel the love like we feel eros and filial love. But somehow, deep down, when we plumb the depths of our hearts, when we know that we are brothers and sisters. And so, if we can reach that place within us, we know in our heads, even if we don't feel it in our hearts, that our love can and in some way must extend to all people. That's why we must love our neighbors as ourselves. Because at the most profound level, our neighbors are our sisters and brothers. That's why we must even love our enemies, because they too are our brothers. Easier said than done, right? But we do it from time to time. We express agape when we perform an act of kindness for someone who is not in our circle, who we don't expect to see or see again, or from whom we don't expect to receive anything in return. We do it when we work for justice, even when we know that we may never see the results. So when we share our kindness and our generosity with a perfect stranger, we're acting out a love that can be likened to God's love for all people, an indiscriminate love for everyone and anyone, no matter who they are or what they've done.